based on her talk title, it may not surprise you that Lisa Cheney-Philp is a local grief guide and death doula. She helps people process their feelings around loss in unique and beautiful ways. As an artist, a river guide, and a creative facilitator, Lisa knows the power of processing grief out loud, in community with others, and in connection with nature. Her company, Women of the Water, creates brave space for those who want to engage with all the endings in our life, not just physical death, with more curiosity and creativity. She is also the co-founder of our nonprofit together called the World Empowerment Experience, and we have a local meetup called Craftivism. Yeah. However, let's go back in time to when Lisa was first applying these tools to her own grief and her own losses, when she was first beginning to go gallivanting with death.
So, as the title of my talk suggests, I have a bit of an unconventional relationship with death. I've often been known to talk about death as my collaborator, as my co-conspirator, and most affectionately as my partner in crime. Anyone else? No takers? It wasn't this way for me always either. I was initiated by death at a relatively early age when my mom died from breast cancer. I was 15 at the time and she was 45. And in the decade or so after her death, I did what I was modeled and offered by my German, stoic, and Midwestern upbringing, what I had inherited, and I did this stay strong and carry on as much as possible strategy, which meant that death and I were doing what we now have a really succinct term for. We were essentially social distancing. So I was living and leading my life, and death was somewhere back there in the shadows, at least 6 feet, thank you very much, out of sight and mostly out of mind. And it wasn't until about my mid-30s, my early to mid-30s, when death broke our unspoken agreement, when I was seeking to become a mother. So our first attempt ended in a miscarriage that totally blindsided us. And then about a year or so later, after the healthy birth of my daughter, which we were so grateful and thankful for and blessed by, it also came with a new identity for me, the quote-unquote motherless mother. And this new identity came with a fresh wave, a tidal wave of new grief, and also a growing pile of questions about my mother, about her life, also about her death, that I couldn't answer, and I didn't have her around to ask. So I was overwhelmed, I was under-resourced, and I needed to find some support to help me find my way through. So the particular path that found me, and I found it at the time, was a death doula training program with the Conscious Dying Institute. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this term death doula, this is a non-medical, holistic support person that you can hire, someone who's dying or their loved one and family can hire to support them before, during, and after death. So I went into this training seeking a container to hold me well with my grief, to help me meet the new experience of grief, and to help me heal some old wounds. And all of those things were finding their way into fulfillment in this program. But there was one practice in particular that really captured my attention and is still capturing my attention to this day, and it was end-of-life care planning. And this was the practice that really helped me transform my mindset from one that started out as mostly like a death no mindset. I was death phobic. I felt very anxious about death and certainly avoidant of it most of the time. But through this particular practice, I was able to try on a new mindset, one that felt more like death yes, if that's possible, if we can do that, death yes. And this was about being curious about death, being willing to imagine into what it means to be death positive and to imagine into what it could even be like to collaborate with death in life-giving ways. So the end-of-life planning process looked like this. In the program, we were told to imagine that we have a very short time left to live. And then we were paired with a partner, and with our partner, they were supposed to help us figure out what was uniquely ours to do in the time that we had left, in the limited time we had left. And not only were we to come up with this plan and write it down on paper, we were also expected to carry out not every action step, but at least the first action step in the direction of some of these visions we came up with. So no small order here. And one of the things that was up for me at the time was feeling a big disconnection between me and my ancestors, especially my mother and my two grandmothers, all of which had passed at this time. And I thought that there was something that maybe I could do to help feed them or help them while I was still in my physical body on the earth plane, but I didn't know what it was. And so my vision then became to find a way to reconnect with them, especially my mother and my grandmothers. Now, there are a whole lot of action steps that I could have come up with to meet this vision. But the thing that occurred to me at the time, and I still can't tell you where exactly this idea came from, was to visit the Royal Gorge Bridge and to feel the metaphorical breadth and depth of the disconnection between us, and then to physically cross the bridge as a way to close the gap. And so because I had to follow through and because I'm a diligent student and generally try to be a high-achieving diligent student, I circled a date on my calendar, which happened to be my 36th birthday, and made a date with death to tie up these loose ends, or to attempt to anyway. So when the day came, I got up really early because I lived in Denver at the time, and this was a 4-hour drive out and back that I had to make in one day only. And I packed my sacred practicals, the snacks and the water and the layers. And I also brought along 3 mementos. And this was one item each for my mother and my 2 grandmothers, things that reminded me of them, of the simple pleasures that they had enjoyed in their life. And so for my mother, whose name was Joanne, I packed a Jordan almond because I remember around Easter time, around this time of year, she would buy them and I can hear the sound of that candy shell kind of clinking around in her mouth as she sucked it down to that nutty center. For my grandma Lorraine, my mother's mother, I called her Grandma Fox, so saying Grandma Lorraine is kind of weird. But Grandma Fox, she drank coffee morning, noon, and night, and always in this same small white mug with that red plastic stirring straw and the coffee mate creamer. So I had a coffee bean for her. And then for my other grandmother, Grandma Schott, or Mildred was her first name, I had a golden raisin. And I had the golden raisin because at Christmas time, she would make these oatmeal raisin cookies. You didn't get Mildred's actual recipe today, but in the spirit of. And to me, they were magical. I had never seen a golden raisin before. I had only seen those very shriveled, tiny, brown or purple ones in the sun-made raisin box that gets shoved in your lunch. So they were a revelation to me, still are to this day. So I packed these 3 items with me, thinking that when I got to the bridge, I would like to drop them into the water below as a way to honor and remember them. So off I went to the Royal Gorge Bridge on the morning of my 36th birthday, because who doesn't go on a date with death on their birthday by themselves? And I was there, probably one of the first people in the parking lot, right when the park opened. I've got my pack, I'm ready to go across this bridge. Has anyone been to the Royal Gorge Bridge? Can anyone describe what it's like there? Big, yeah. Deep. Yeah, this is a dramatic landscape, if you will, on scale of the dramatic disconnection that I was feeling. It's about 1,200 feet wide from one side to the other, and about 1,000 feet above the Arkansas River in this very epically gorgeous Royal Gorge Canyon. So here I was to cross this bridge, and as I get going, as I get started, I quickly meet this park ranger, and we're chatting because I'm one of the only people there, and it's early in the morning, and what else do we have to do? So we're talking about the weather and the water flows, and he's telling me about Memorial Day weekend that's coming up and all the people that'll be there. And I tell him it's my birthday and that I'm traveling without my family, and we have this little connection. And then we kind of part ways, we say our goodbyes, and I start moving along. And so, because the scenery is so dramatic, I'm kind of expecting something dramatic to happen. So when I'm like walking, moseying across this bridge, and I find myself about 3/4 of the way across, I'm kind of like, nothing's happened yet. Like am I doing something wrong? I don't know if I've got this ceremony, ritual thing right. And getting a little flustered, and then I realized, oh right, I brought those special objects. I need to find a place to drop them off the bridge. I want them to land in the water though. And because we're so high up the river, it's just this little trail, like way down there. So I'm like doing something like this, like coming up to the railing, looking over the side, trying to find, is it underneath me now? How about now? There's little cracks between the wood planks. I'm like down on the ground trying to finagle. And so I finally find my spot. By this point, I backtracked back to the center of the bridge. And I'm ready to do my ritual. And I go into my pack and I start looking for my objects, and they're not there. Or at least I'm not sure if they're there. I start to panic. I'm checking every pocket, every zippered things. The layers are coming out onto the floor on the bridge. And I hear this voice behind me say are you okay? And I kind of look up and I see it's my friend the ranger. He's checking on me. We had a good conversation earlier. He's just checking in. And then as I take him in and I realize what I've been doing, I discover that no, he's not just checking on me. He's actually worried about me. Part of his job is to make sure that people visiting the park are safe, and I am reading as a red flag. And so what he says is, "Are you okay?" But what I imagine him saying is, but not saying, is something like, "Don't jump. Please don't jump." And in all seriousness. And so as I'm taking this in and trying to figure out how to respond to this ranger, what I'm thinking is, he's not wrong. I am, part of what he's thinking is correct. I am here with death today, but I'm not doing what he thinks I'm doing. I'm here with death to make sense of the deaths of my ancestors and make sense of my life in relation to them. But I'm not here to jump off this bridge. And so I'm trying to think of, what can I say that's going to help him understand and move this along? So what I say is something like, "I'm okay, truly, I'm good. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, but really, really, I'm good." And it's at this point where he shares his name with me. He tells me he's Bob, and I tell him I'm Lisa, and we have this really lovely moment of human connection. the de-escalation strategy has worked, right? I'm ready to remove myself from the center of the bridge, and I very swiftly make my way all the way across to the other side, pretty much half crying, half laughing, totally embarrassed, and not quite sure what just happened. So on the other side of the bridge, I kind of collect myself. I find a little shady spot. I pull out my journal, and I'm trying to what just happened? Something happened. And what occurs to me is that I believe that my ancestors brought me Bob the Ranger because, one, they have a sense of humor, and they're like, this girl needs to get herself to the other side of this bridge as quickly as possible. And even more importantly, that there was no disconnection to begin with. I wasn't over here and they weren't over there. They were with me the whole time. I just didn't know how to connect with them. So it's steeped in all of this overwhelming emotion, decades of buildup of wondering about this disconnection, and having some large piece of it resolved in an afternoon was pretty remarkable. And when I found myself back at my car in the parking lot, sure enough, there's my sacred mementos sitting on the dashboard. So I took them and myself into Canyon City, the town right near the Royal Gorge Park, and found a riverside park with, I kid you not, maybe a 4-foot footbridge. 2-3 steps across that bridge, and I could sit down right next to the river. I could put my feet in it. And so I brought my objects to that spot in the river, and instead of dropping them into the water, I took them in one at a time and ate them and enjoyed them, realizing that it wasn't just me with my desire to help and feed them, but that was a reciprocal situation, and they are also right there wanting to help and nourish me as well. So I could end this story right here, and it would be a pretty good one, I think. But what's true about this is that experience was the first of many. One of my first collaborations with death, my one-day adventure gallivanting with death on my birthday, was truly just the beginning. As I continued to carry out these first steps from my end-of-life care plan, I noticed really similar things happening. I would take a pretty small and meaningful action, and then something really big and really beautiful would come after it. And it wasn't just happening for me. As I started to do this process with other people, I was seeing the same thing again and again. And it started just to, really help me see that when we can turn towards death and imagine collaborating and conspiring with it, that people are living far more inspiring, creative, and fulfilling lives. So the couple of things I want you to walk away with tonight is, one, an exquisitely well-lived life can start with a humbly well-planned death. And number two, though I may be no Bob the Ranger, I would consider it an honor and truly a pleasure to usher any of you across into your own more connected and uniquely unconventional relationship with death. Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lisa. Wonderful job. Woo!